And still talking about court cases, the Supreme Court has again ordered sacked House of Representatives member Honorable Herman Imbe to return all salaries and allowances he collected before his removal from office. Well, led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoga, and the five-man panel of the court reaffirmed his earlier judgment on the ground that the law does not allow the court to review its own verdict. Mr. Hembe, who had been removed by the Apex Court as a member representing Vanikia and constituency of Benue State, filed a suit seeking a review of the judgment as it relates to the refund of salaries and allowances. The court also awarded 1 million naira cost against Mr. Hembe after his counsel withdrew the application for the review of the judgment. In his earlier ruling on July the 17th, 2017, the court had ordered Hembe to return all salaries and benefits collected while in office within 90 days. And now, the question whether President Buhari is in sync with the military tag of IPOB as a terrorist organization can now be rested. The federal government today says the president actually approved it. The government spokesperson, Lai Mohammed, said that the proscription of the group has the approval of President Muhammadu Buhari, insisting that no country would tolerate the methods of IPOB, which includes setting up a military wing. The Senate President had said the proscription and declaration of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, as a terrorist organization is illegal. Earlier today, Southeast governors met with the Senate President Bukola Saraki. They said they are not against banning IPOB's activities, but they just don't agree with the decision to place such a tag on them. Let's get perspectives on this one. Mr. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer. He's joining us from Abuja studio, regular analyst on the program, and of course, the special assistant to the president on prosecution, Chief Okoi Obono-Obla. Many thanks, gentlemen, for coming on the program tonight. Let me begin with you, Mr. Bwala. This conversation has been going on for for a few days now. And if you look at the perspective now, the debate whether or not the president did approve it, which is part of the process of prescribing a group such as the IPOB. And now that we have the details that, according to the federal government, that the president actually approved it, what's your take?
Well, thank you for having me. It is given that the procedure for proscription of any group as a terrorist organization as provided by the Terrorism Prevention Act of 2011, but further amended in 2013 to incorporate even financing of terrorism activities. It is clear that the army, the matter is rested now that the army cannot, but the president haven't approved. I don't think it is sufficient until there is an application before the court, and the court, upon affidavit, probably attached with evidence to suggest that the act of the group or individual constitute terrorism as provided by the Prevention Act, then when that application is granted, the group is deemed as a terrorist organization. But there are quick facts that I want to bring to the notice of the viewers today. By that implication, even if, for example, the court makes that order today, it does not mean that if there are individuals arrested before today, they can be charged under the Terrorism Act, because the act is clear that nobody can be charged or be tried on the offense of terrorism before the proscription of the group as a terrorism organization. Secondly, and very importantly, if you look at the interpretation as confined in the Terrorism Prevention Act, it is clear that we are going to find, not just in the case of IPOB in the country, a lot of other groups are going to fall under this classification as a terrorism organization, because the act makes it clear that any act of a person or group of persons that tend to unduly compel the government to act or refrain from acting, that harass or intimidate a population, that compel that sort of destabilize the political, economical, social structure of the country, that commits an act of kidnapping, and many other offenses, as you can find there, constitute terrorism. And anybody who commits such act will be tried under Terrorism Act. So if you look at that definition, you're going to find that lots of activities by not just a person, but group of the people in this country are going to be classified under that act, and a lot of people are going to be tried on that account.
Let me go to the advisor to the president on prosecution, Chief Obono-Obla. Especially when the federal government came out through the spokesperson of government, Lai Mohammed, that the sponsors of IPOB and their activities are those a coalition of looters and those who are disgruntled politically. And now with the position of government that the president did approve it, you are very concerned about the issue of corruption. What does it bring to you or to your mind presently?
Well, maybe you are not aware of the fact that today a federal high court in Abuja granted an application filed by the Office of the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. And the application was argued by the Honorable Attorney General Abubakar Malami SAN and his team. And the court granted the prayers in the motion paper that the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, is a proscribed organization. It's a terrorist organization, and it's thereby proscribed. And it's in conformity with the provisions of Section 2, Sub 1 of the Terrorism Prevention Act 2011. There was another amendment in 2013. That section says the Attorney General, the Inspector General of Police, the National Security Advisor are empowered to apply to a judge in chambers with the approval of the president to proscribe any terrorist organization. So that is the position now, that the court has formally, a federal high court today has formally proscribed IPOB.
Okay, what does it bring to your mind when we come to the issue of the funding or the sponsoring of this organization? Are you alarmed that this group might be sponsored by politically disgruntled people or those whom the federal government has tagged looters, treasury looters?
I definitely agree with the position taken by the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, that it seems this group and other groups that have been terrorizing the country, that have been threatening the country, that have been trying to destabilize the country, that have been importing arms illegally into the country, maybe are politicians who are disgruntled or politicians who are aggrieved by the anti-corruption agenda of this present administration. Otherwise, these people are talking about that the Southeast is being marginalized. But this same Daniel Kalu supported Jonathan's government. He canvassed, he campaigned for Jonathan. And in Jonathan's government, the government was dominated by people from the Southeast. We didn't hear anybody from the Southeast complaining. I am from the South-South, but I can say that the Jonathan government benefited the Southeast in terms of appointment more than the South-South. But it was an opportunity for the South-South leaders who were very prominent in Jonathan's government to ensure that the infrastructural deficit we see in the Southeast is addressed. It's not only in the Southeast, the infrastructural deficit is all over the country. It is not enough for people to begin to ask for a separate country. The Southeast people cannot complain that they are being marginalized. Look, the Southeast has 5 states. If you add part of Delta, which is Igbo speaking, we are talking about 6 states. If you had part of River State, which is also Igbo speaking, they are talking about 7 states. What are they talking about? We had a vice president who was from Southeast. We have had about 4 presidents of the Senate who are from Southeast. We had an Army Chief of Staff. We had a Naval Chief of Staff. We had an Air Force Chief. We have a Chief of Defense Staff. We had numerous head of service, secretary to government, permanent secretaries. If you go to the Federal Civil Service, statistics shows that the southeastern state of Abia is leading other states, even more than some 2 or 3 northern states put together. So what are they talking about? They are everywhere in the country. They are doing business. Look, somebody told me about 80% of the buildings in Abuja are owned by people from the southeast. So what are they talking about? What of those of us who come from inconsequential minority groups? I can say that some ethnic groups in this country have never produced a commissioner. They have never produced a member of the parliament. They have never produced a senator or a minister or a permanent secretary or a director in the federal government bureaucracy or a general in the army or a general in the police, air force or navy. So what are these people talking about? So I think they are being sponsored by politicians who are not happy that President Buhari won the election. You know, the election was fought bitterly. A lot of us who was people against Mr. President, a lot of divisive statements were made by those he wanted to wrestle power from. So, and they have not been able to move on. The South people have moved on, but the Southeast people are very bitter. If you go to the social media, most of the messages are being peddled by people from the southeast. So
Chief Obla, I mean,
go to Lagos,
that may be to the extreme when you label blank, when you have a blanket labeling that people from the southeast majorly are the ones putting up 8 speeches.
Well, it's my opinion.
But
I
that's your opinion, but it's not the truth. It may not stand as the truth. But let me quickly come to Mr. Buala.
From my own findings.
From your own findings, yes. But